what makes great fintech marketers great and different than when you're marketing, say, like some cosmetics. A fintech marketer, I think, should see this challenge as a really kind of unique to financial services, and what makes them, in my opinion, have to really dig deeper and get more creative and also really understand complicated financial concepts. That sounds like more engaging and more fun to me as a marketer anyways.
Everyone's talking about product and sales, but almost no one's talking about compliance, especially in fintech, and that's a huge missed opportunity, according to Heather Cantua. She's here to show us how legal can be your edge, not your enemy. So in this episode, we're gonna take an inside look at her playbook for using compliance to build trust and win customers. I'm Tracy Windsor.
I'm DJ, and this is Down to Fintech.
Goals, get DTF. I'm down to Fintech.
Heather, thank you so much for being here with us.
Yeah, I'm happy to be here. Really excited for our conversation today.
Heather, you're a fintech attorney who specializes in launching new financial products and navigating regulatory compliance. Can you give us a quick overview of what your job actually is? What do you do for fintech companies?
Yeah, like you summarized it there, as great as launching new products. So, I got into the law hoping that I could really help advise businesses who are on the forefront of providing customers new and exciting things, and especially when it comes to financial services. That's where I saw kind of the overlap with a lot of legal and compliance issues where I could provide the most help to my clients. My goal nowadays is really to help my clients see legal and compliance as their competitive edge and not a roadblock or a checkbox that they just have to comply with on their, the real goal of launching the product, but see, my role as a partner with them and helping them shape what that product look like and how it can help, the broader public.
Definitely. So what happens when a founder comes to you and they're wanting to launch this new fintech product? What do they think they need versus what do they actually need?
Yeah, so this happens all the time, and I really enjoy having new calls with founders who are, have thought of a new way to, help someone finance their dream business. Like either, I've had a new client coming talk to me about, focusing on small farmers and how can we, help agriculture and growing food in the U.S. or homeowners, first-time home buyers, right? Like how do we get more people into this really expensive housing market? And I'll notice that some of my founders will come to me having never talked to an attorney before. And they have just been existing in this space of how do I design this best product possible with no insight into what the lending rules are or, what kind of licenses they would need. And so my first step is really to try and take their product outline and say, okay, here is a trigger for a license, or here is where you're going to really need either a bank partner or somebody who's going to be integral to launching your product. And I'll give that initial feedback. And honestly, a lot of times the founders will say, wow, we had no idea that was going to be kind of the shape that the product's going to have to take. And actually, in going through this exercise, you've helped us focus and realize that this one, line item of the product is really where I have the most knowledge, where I have the most tech, where I have the best team to launch. And so you've helped me narrow and actually define the product better. And then I could be like, great, now let's go to, drafting your contract set. What are your website disclosures going to look like? If you are going to need that partner, let me see if I can make an introduction for you or help start those conversations. So I do really hope that when people come to me, they don't see me as saying, no, you can't do something, but let's figure out how you can do whatever your dream is.
Is it time to come to you? Should we come to you yet? And then you're like, you should have come to me 3 months ago. But how does that usually play out?
Yeah, I think there's a mix. Some people do come to me with a very small idea, or they're just starting with their idea, and that's great. I'd love to be able to give you some basic, kind of guardrails or, trigger points, like I was saying. And then there are some people that are like, oh yeah, we've gone through, an entire, customer survey. We've already done market research. We already have, this whole thing prototyped out. So it's a variety. I mean, obviously, let's just state the obvious. Lawyers are expensive, right? We usually charge hourly. There's usually going to need to be a retainer, to get us like started. And so I see that hesitation. But I always will have, if someone comes to me with either a recommendation from another client, or if you have, a good sketch outline of your product, I will always give a half-hour intro call for free, right? Like, let's just like start the conversation. Let's see, how our dialogue goes, what your working style is like. And hopefully that I can provide enough free advice or guidance and have enough chemistry with that person to be like, all right, yeah, this is a great client relationship to start. So I recommend that if you are, starting out on launching a new product, first ask around your friends. My best referrals are client referrals, because you're likely going to be working kind of, in a same manner. But if not, obviously search around and ask people to have a conversation. The earlier you start that conversation, I think generally the better.
In previous conversations that we had with you, you had mentioned you've met someone who's already launched with initial friends and family funding, but no legal guidance. What are those conversations like?
Here, I'll actually give you an example of one client who came to me who had, prototyped out what their product was going to look like, started a website, started a Twitter marketing campaign, but they didn't actually have the product ready to launch, right? They were just trying to gauge what hooks were resonating people, how do they want to frame, the product naming and things like that, which I totally get. Yeah, you want to do that market research up front. But in financial services, most states have laws prohibiting marketing a financial services product that's not actually available. So if you are out there saying, hey, I can offer you, whatever your fintech product is, but there's no actual product there, that is something that a state AG or another government regulator could take a lot of issue with. So I have had a couple people come to me like that, where they've said like, hey, I actually haven't launched any product, but I put out a marketing campaign trying to do some research, and these state AGs, government regulators have bots out on the internet that are looking for trigger words for advertising financial services in their states. And if one of their bots pulls this up and they're like, hey, this looks like you're offering a product and it would require a license, and I don't know who you are, you will get a letter from that regulator. Of course, there's kind of a de minimis issue here. If it's very small, you might not, but I have had that happen repeatedly. And so that's an example of where there maybe was like a little oops, but we can fix it. Like, we can establish a relationship with that regulator, explain to them the situation, and typically they'll be like, okay, well, you need to stop immediately until you get the license, and I can help, the client navigate all of that. So, earlier is better, but I generally take the motto of everything is fixable. There's no kind of problem that we can't, reestablish trust and be able to, launch eventually.
That's why you have a lawyer, right? Fix your issues.
Let's say that a company comes to you at the right moment, or in the moment of ideation, and they're ready to dive in, start developing, the right heads of different departments. What departments are you engaging with, and what does that look like? Yeah,
so depending on how you're organizing yourself, but a lot of fintech companies will have a product team. Maybe that product team is sort of part of a customer success team, or even part of the marketing team. But whoever is in charge of really designing what the economics between each one of the customer and the company is, I usually start there and trying to distill down, hopefully into as plain English terms as possible, of like, what is this fintech offering to consumers? And so we start with usually drafting whatever the contract is going to be. There's always this kind of marketing funnel that everyone has. And to me, when you get to that origination thing, the key piece there is, all right, what is our contract between the customer and the fintech? That actually outlines, if it's a loan, what are your repayment terms? If it's an equity investment, what is the actual deal? And by starting with that contract It helps you define terms, what are your customers called, right? That's something that we can figure out through drafting of the contract. Are there certain fees, and can we come up with really clear, one word description of what these fees are? That's gonna from the contract. And so you draft all that out, and then I start looking forward up the funnel. Okay, so which one of these fees, now that we have these defined terms, at what point in this funnel do we need to disclose that to the customer, that it makes sense, that they'll actually understand what those fees are? And then I'll do, I do a lot of review of Figma boards or whatever, kind of software you're working in, to then view the funnel from the customer's perspective and a regulator's perspective, and place either, little disclosures if you're doing certain, a common one is if you're going to market using text messages, you have to get consents for that. So usually you want that before your contract. So let's pull that up higher. If you're doing credit and you're accessing people's credit reports, there's consents needed for that. So we'll kind of take the contract and then sprinkle the things that we need earlier up front. And that's usually, kind of the two basic steps of launching a product that I help clients with.
Cool.
Yeah, super cool. You brought up marketing, which we love talking about marketing. So what are some of the first things you're looking at from your role when a fintech team brings you in?
It's gonna be maybe kind of a nerdy term, but hopefully we've got some nerds out here. What that means is, if you're using the word, we are the best, we are the fastest, we are the cheapest. So that's an unqualified superlative when you're claiming something that's, like the ultimate of something.
We love those in marketing.
No, that is my first flag.
This is the worst thing. This is the best. All right.
If you are sending me marketing review copy and there is an unqualified superlative, I'm going to mark that. And that's because that's exactly what a regulator is going to mark. Actually, just last week, I was looking into mortgage lending laws in Ohio and actually saw in their statute themselves, they prohibit mortgage lenders from using unqualified superlatives in their marketing. It's too much of a it's not actually diving down into what makes your product different, better, specific, unique, that is going to help exactly what this customer needs. It's not that you're going to be the fastest loan. Maybe it's going to be get your funding in 5 days, right? And you see the difference between saying we're the fastest, between saying we're going to get you money in 5 days. If you're saying we'll get you money in 5 days, you could actually show a regulator your funding timeline, right? Our average customer application is this day, we fund by this day. Great, specific, informative, and actually details, a competitive advantage that you have over other people in the industry. So that's my first and biggest marketing guidance is, if you're using unqualified superlatives, I encourage you to dig deeper as to what the value prop really is, and make sure, if you're a marketer, to know what all those things are. Go down, to the next cubicle or whatever, your next Slack channel, and ask your data people, what are real statistics here, or things that I can use to help describe this product to the public. It'll make all of your marketing actually, I think, much better and much more engaging to people.
Yeah, you said that. You said earlier on, you said, I work with marketing I take it from the scope of the regulator and the consumer, the customer. And I was like, I wonder how she has both of those scopes, because I would really think about it from the regulator's perspective. But now you really outlined how you're, not only making sure that this is legally sound and safe and won't get flagged, but that actually it's better, it's superior for the customer as well. Do you have any worst offenders? Any taglines or anything you've heard that are?
She mentioned a few with oh, we're the best, we're the fastest.
Those aren't the worst that she's seen.
Outright lies. If somebody's saying you get your time in 5 days, and the regulator comes and I'm like, okay, client, let's show them the data, and they don't actually have the data, that's the worst.
They're like, that's aspirational.
You cannot do aspirational marketing. That goes back to can't talk about a product if the product doesn't exist. It needs to You need to have tie back to fact in every piece of marketing you have.
That's so important. Yeah.
And it really comes down to showing versus just telling. And the examples that you gave is like, okay, how can you give it a tangible, specific way of phrasing it or showing it so that one is not getting flagged by regulators, and also your consumers know exactly what they can get from using your product.
Yeah, and I think that should be seen as like what makes great fintech marketers great and different than when you're marketing, say, like some cosmetics, right? You can go out and make whatever kind of claim about you want with your cosmetic company, but a fintech marketer, I think, should see this challenge as a really kind of unique to financial services. And what makes them, in my opinion, have to really dig deeper and get more creative and also really understand complicated financial concepts. That sounds like more engaging and more fun to me as a marketer anyways.
I wish they would actually regulate cosmetics. That would be very helpful. I know there's a lot of things in this country that don't make it in other countries, but yeah. So, what should marketing teams? What should they strive for when they're looking for that kind of precision? How do they know that they've gotten there, other than a very clear tagline that ties to a very clear statistic?
We had talked about, kind of this customer journey, and a lot of people see it as this straight line, right? From you hear about our product first to then we get some knowledge and background, and then we actually successfully sell you the product. Don't think about, the end point as just be selling one product. You want to know, okay, after they've had that product, how are they enjoying it? How are they using it? What are their complaints about that product? Mm-hmm. Regulators are mainly driven by customer complaints. And so that can be the CFPB at a federal level. It can also be the BBB, the Better Business Bureau. That's not actually a government regulator. It's a private company, but it has positioned itself in such a way that it has really rigorous standards for responding to customer complaints. They, do trend lines. They give you a rating as to like how good you are at responding to customer complaints. And I have seen over and over again, if companies have a quickly declining BBB rating, that is a number one thing for a state AG or a regulator to say, hey, we're seeing customer complaints uptick because your marketing claims to be able to help someone buy their first home or whatever your marketing claim is. But it turns out once they get down to the funnel, customers are complaining that their expectations weren't met. And now we're going to dig into, give us all of your data and give us all of, kind of the background about your product. So if I'm a marketing team, I'm going to make sure that I know what our customers are complaining about and see that as, an integral part of my job to refine my messaging. The great thing too is all this BBB and CFPB data is public. All of their complaint portals are public. And so if you're just starting out as a company, check out the other people in your industry who are offering similar products. Check out what their profiles say, see what their customers are complaining about. And that might actually be a source of a competitive edge for you because you're like, oh, I see where they're not meeting expectations. And that's where I can step up.
Ooh, sounds like a fantastic way to start your competitive analysis.
Yeah, it's a treasure trove of information. I mean, it's really, especially if you're going into a space where there's a lot of established competitors who are likely to have a lot of complaints. Dive in. It's free.
We are trying to create accurate marketing that reflects why someone might say that we're the best, right? What we're actually doing, getting that feedback from the customers, complaints, praises, and then feeding that back into how you're creating your next marketing campaign or improving it.
Yeah, I think marketing teams and fintech companies that are really doing it well, everyone in the company knows what that customer journey looks like, right? They know, okay, this is what our marketing is saying. This is maybe what the application looks like. These are the questions that we're asking on the application. This is then when we start maybe the text messaging. This is then when we need them to, fill out some additional information. And when I see companies kind of slipping a bit, it's when different groups own different slices of that customer journey, and they don't actually really see the full thing all put together. People are moving fast, right? Marketing teams like, well, we're going to launch this, we're going to move this point up and, collect this information here, and maybe that doesn't get down to whatever, if you call it the originations team or the closing team. And so making sure that you have a company culture where that information is being shared, maybe if you're using a Confluence or a wiki or whatever your internal sharing page is, like have a page that's about the customer journey that looks at it from the customer's perspective, and everybody knows that, and then you know how your pieces fall into place, and are seeing it from your customer's perspective.
Yeah, I love that. We had Lindy from Every.io on a previous episode, and she was talking a little bit about this, about how it's important for marketing that they need to actually have ownership of every stage of the customer journey, even in some ways that don't feel intuitive, because the way they nurture and how that can tie into that feedback loop you were mentioning is so critical.
And so what's your ultimate goal? How do you know when you've succeeded in your partnerships with fintech companies?
Well, actually, we just had, a Thanksgiving holiday, and it was right before the break, and I had been meeting with some founders over November who were more in the camp where they had thought they had the whole product outlined and had started doing marketing research, and came to me, and I had to say, like, well, we can do this, but you're going to need a license here, you're going to need this here. And they were like, whoa, okay, hold on, we got to step back. And I helped them focus. I was like, okay, well, if you would like to launch, here's, kind of a segment of a product that we can launch as an MVP. It sounds like you guys already got this ready to go and we don't need any licenses. And they sent me a really, really sweet email saying, like, we had no expectation of when we were working with an attorney that they would be able to feel like such a partner to our business and care about us and help us really shape, what we're going to launch. And that felt great. Like it was a nice, Thanksgiving message to leave them with. And now, I've given them kind of their package of materials, and hopefully they're off and building and ready, to launch in Q1 of next year. But really just having clients who articulate to me like, hey, you've helped me, that's when I'm doing a good job.
So you I imagine you're on the sidelines. You're waiting to come in. At what points are they going to call you back to the table to really help move things forward?
So most of my clients, once I've helped them launch a product, every piece of marketing that goes out, I will review just for another, quick check. And definitely, so say you're in a fintech where you're partnering with a bank to offer a product, most banks will require that even the bank's lawyers also need to review every single marketing piece that talks about the bank's product. And so that's where I see a lot of lawyers become the last checkbox marker, like, okay, we just did this whole campaign, now just go get legal to sign off on it, because we need this as a, a requirement from the bank or an internal policy. And so I'm trying to learn how to empower my clients to be their own first lawyer legal check, instead of just telling them, hey, change this word, telling them why we need that word changed. And so next time that word comes up, they're like, oh, I remember, there was some issues here, and they have enough information to actually suggest the changes before it even comes to me. And so I'm helping people build out that marketing legal compliance review. As always, there's going to be product pivots over time. Like, oh, we're actually seeing that we need, this fee that we originally had to cover this thing. We need to, shift that over here, or we need to add a fee, or something about the product is going to have to change. So help them make sure that's still kind of compliant with whatever their regulatory strategy is. And this will surprise, some people that, the 50 states all have very different rules. We like to think of, we're one big country and that the federal regulators are the only things that matter, but that's really not true. Unless you're a nationally or federally chartered bank or working with one of them, the state laws do really matter in terms of what your interest rates you can charge, what your origination fees you can charge, what licenses you're going to need. Like I mentioned, Ohio has that one strict prohibition. Colorado actually has some plain English requirements that apply to fintech. They'll have like a reading grade score that needs to apply to all of the documents that you're sending to your customer.
Wow.
And so if a fintech has launched a product in a specific state and they're like, okay, now we're running, Heather, now we want to launch in 8 new states. Can we, do a review for that? I'll help them, scale after they've launched.
Awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, this is super interesting.
Heather was like, I'm not on the sidelines. I'm the quarterback.
Right.
Like...
No, you're just staying on the squad. But all this super interesting. So glad we were able to get, your perspective on it from a legal standpoint and in the compliance angle and how that ties into the marketing. How can viewers and listeners learn more about you and your company?
Yeah, so I'm a partner at a law firm called scalefirm.com. Go to our website, check it out. Also has my email on there, so feel free to reach out if you're like, man, this sounds like someone who I want to work with. I'd love to hear from you. And I'm also on LinkedIn. I'm starting to realize that LinkedIn is a great place to share ideas. I'd love, kind of a goal for me is to follow some of my own advice on marketing and get myself out there some more, part of the reason of doing this podcast. So reach out.
Thanks so much. Really appreciate your time.
Yeah, thanks. It was great.
I'm down to fintech, baby. Yeah, I'm down to fintech.